Flight attendant called cops on a black girl froze when her father showed his badge. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. It started on a quiet Thursday morning at Gate C-17, where sunlight spilled through tall glass walls and turned the floor into a mirror of soft gold. Travelers waited in loose lines, faces buried in phones and coffee cups, unaware that in just a few minutes, this ordinary boarding gate would turn into a courtroom of public conscience. At the counter stood Rebecca Lane, a senior flight attendant with a perfectly pressed uniform and the kind of confidence that came from being obeyed, not questioned. She glanced at the small black girl in front of her, 10 years old, thin denim jacket, tiny backpack, boarding pass clutched tight. "You can't be here alone," Rebecca said flatly, scanning her from head to toe. "Where are your parents?" The girl looked up, calm but unsure. "My dad's parking the car. He told me to wait here." This was all way in state. Rebecca frowned. "Really? And this ticket?" She held it up between two manicured fingers. "First class?" "Sweetheart, I think there's been a mistake." Heads began to turn. A few passengers nearby looked over their shoulders. The girl's name tag read Maya Holt. She said softly, "There's no mistake. My dad booked it." Rebecca's smile tightened. "We've had fake bookings before. I'll have to verify this." She waved to the uniformed airport officer standing by the door. "Sir, can you come here a moment?" Maya's grip on her backpack strap tightened, but she didn't move. The officer walked closer, his face neutral, his stance cautious, as if waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Rebecca leaned forward, lowering her voice but not her arrogance. "These people always try to act confident," she whispered to him. "Just make sure she doesn't walk away." The words carried farther than she intended. A nearby mother gasped. A young man raised his phone, recording quietly. The room's hum shifted. Whispers rippled through the line. Maya blinked once, steady. She didn't cry, didn't protest. She only said, "My dad said to wait right here." But Rebecca wasn't listening. She turned to the officer again. "Escort her aside, please. We'll get this sorted." Now they're lugs. And just like that, an innocent morning at Gate C-17 turned into something else. A scene everyone would remember, one that would spread across the internet within hours. The camera pans closer to Maya's face, the reflection of flashing police lights coloring her eyes. Because Justice was about to walk through that glass door, and he was wearing a suit. The security officer stood a few feet away from Maya, radio in hand but unsure what to do. He looked more confused than concerned. The little girl, however, remained completely still, chin slightly lifted, eyes calm, as if she'd seen storms like this before. "Sweetheart," Rebecca said, her tone suddenly sweet but hollow, "why don't you come sit over here while we wait to verify your information?" "I'm fine standing," Maya replied softly. Her voice was clear, polite, steady, the kind of composure that made the crowd lean in closer. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Suit yourself." She turned to the officer again. "Make sure she doesn't wander. You never know these days." The words carried weight. Judging looks began to form in the line, passengers whispering, assuming the worst. Some stared at the girl's dark skin, her simple clothes, and made their own stories in their heads. Maya took a slow breath and looked down at the boarding pass still clutched in her small hands. Seat 2A, first class, paid in full. Her father had printed it himself that morning. A flash of memory crossed her mind. Her dad kneeling by the car, tying the small pink ribbon on her backpack. "Keep your head high, no matter what happens, okay? I'll be right behind you." He'd smiled, proud. The kind of proud that comes from knowing you've worked too hard for anyone to question your worth. Now, she stood alone, and the world was doing exactly what he warned her about. Rebecca typed something on the computer, frowning. "There's no record under Holt." "Are you sure that's your last name?" "Yes, ma'am." That's strange. Maybe you spelled it wrong when you booked?" Maya's brows furrowed. I didn't book it. My dad did. Oh, right, Rebecca said with a short laugh. Of course he did. The sarcasm was thinly veiled. A few passengers looked uncomfortable now. A man in a business suit shook his head. She's a kid, he muttered under his breath. But Rebecca ignored him. She leaned closer to Maya again, lowering her voice. Listen, honey, if you're trying to board a flight you can't afford, that's a serious offense. I'm just trying to help you before this gets worse. Maya's gaze didn't waver. You're not helping. For a moment, even Rebecca blinked, caught off guard by the clarity in that little voice. The officer spoke quietly. Mom, maybe we should wait until her guardian arrives. I am her guardian right now, Rebecca cut in sharply. Until someone proves otherwise. Maya's eyes lifted toward the terminal doors, sunlight pouring in. Somewhere beyond the glass, a familiar figure was walking toward her, slow, deliberate, carrying the kind of presence that changes a room before he even enters it. The first crack of fate had appeared, and the quiet man approaching the gate was about to rewrite everything that followed. The hum of the airport had changed, conversations quieted, replaced by the rhythmic click of Rebecca's heels as she paced near the counter, her voice echoing across gate C-17. I'm telling you, something isn't right, she said to the officer. Kids don't fly first class alone. Not unless, she paused, eyes flicking back to Maya. Someone's trying to pull a scam. The officer shifted uneasily. Mom, she's 10. Rebecca folded her arms. Exactly. 10 and traveling alone with a platinum ticket? Please. Someone's using this child to sneak a free seat. Passengers were listening now. A few shook their heads. Others whispered. A man in line whispered, Can't believe she's serious. A woman nearby clutched her coffee tighter, torn between disbelief and pity. Maya stood silently beside the stanchion, backpack strap pressed tight in her hand. Her breathing was slow but deliberate. She'd learned from her father. Never let them see you break. Rebecca snapped her fingers toward the agent at the kiosk. Run the name again, HOLT. Check every system. If there's nothing, call TSA. The agent hesitated. Rebecca, this might not. Now. The officer exhaled, rubbing his temple. Ma'am, I think we should just wait for her father. Rebecca turned, her voice slicing through the air. And if that father never shows up, then what? We let anyone just walk into first class and say, My daddy's coming. Her sarcasm made a few passengers chuckle nervously. But Maya didn't move. She whispered softly, He's coming. Rebecca caught it. What was that? I said my dad's coming, Maya repeated, louder this time. Rebecca smiled coldly. Well, I hope he knows what kind of trouble you've caused. Just then, another attendant young, nervous approached holding a digital tablet. Her name badge read Lila Nguyen. Excuse me, she said carefully. I checked the manifest. There is a passenger named Maya Holt on the roster, seat 2A, verified through corporate. Rebecca frowned. That's impossible. Check again. I did, twice. Then the system glitched. Happens all the time. Lila hesitated. It didn't glitch, Rebecca. There's also an emergency contact listed. She glanced at Maya, lowering her voice someone pretty high up. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Please, don't tell me her dad's the president. Maya didn't speak. She just looked toward the glass doors again. Outside, the reflection of a dark sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver's door opened. Inside, Rebecca's radio buzzed, security dispatch confirming her call. She straightened proudly. Good, they're on their way. Maybe now we'll get answers. But as she said it, a shift rippled through the waiting crowd, the kind that happens right before a storm hits. The officer turned toward the entrance, his posture changing. Lila looked too, her lips parted slightly, whispering, Oh my God! Through the sliding glass doors walked a tall man in a charcoal suit, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the scene ahead. And though no one knew his name yet, every instinct in the room suddenly understood. This wasn't just a father walking in. This was authority arriving. The automatic doors parted with a soft hiss. Every conversation at gate C-17 froze. A man stepped through the light, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal gray suit that looked made to command respect. His walk was quiet, but deliberate. Rebecca glanced up, annoyed. "Sir, this area is restricted right now." But the man didn't even look at her. His gaze went straight to Maya, still standing where she'd been told to stay. The moment their eyes met, her composure finally softened. "Dad," she whispered. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The man stopped beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded. She said my ticket was fake. He exhaled slowly, the way a storm releases pressure before lightning strikes. Did she now? Rebecca stepped forward, defensive. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. We're handling a possible case of identity fraud." He turned to her, calm, unreadable, and reached into his inner pocket. A flash of metal caught the light. A badge. "Name's Daniel Holt," he said evenly. "Chief of Federal Airport Security." The officer who had been hovering nearby straightened instantly, eyes wide. "Chief Holt, sir." "Stand down," Daniel said quietly. "I'll take it from here." Rebecca blinked, her lips parting. "Chief." "What?" He glanced at her name tag as if reading a file. "Rebecca Lane, Senior Attendant, Horizon Air. You called my men to detain a 10-year-old girl, my daughter, because you assumed she didn't belong in first class?" Her mouth opened, then shut again. "Sir, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," he interrupted, still calm. "You didn't know, and instead of asking, you judged." Behind him, passengers began murmuring louder now, phones lifted higher. The officer lowered his radio and took a quiet step back, as though retreating from a crime scene. Lila Nguyen, the young attendant, clutched her tablet. Her voice trembled. "Chief Holt, I checked the list earlier." Her seat was confirmed. "I tried to tell her." Daniel turned to her, his tone softening. "You did the right thing, Miss Nguyen. Thank you for speaking up." Rebecca's cheeks flushed crimson. This is all a misunderstanding." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "No, Miss Lane. This is a mirror. You just don't like what it's showing you." "Well, with to Ive." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Even the boarding announcements faded into the background hum. Then, slowly, Rebecca's confidence began to crack. Her shoulders slumped, voice trembling. "Chief Holt, I truly didn't mean any harm. I thought I was following protocol." Daniel nodded once, expression unreadable. "Protocol is what you follow when you have no conscience to guide you. Unfortunately for you, mine still works." Acted Taylor doing over. He lifted his phone and made a brief call. Concise, professional, final. "Yes. Protocol 6. Initiate." Lila swallowed hard. The officer turned pale. Maya looked up at her father, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" He smiled faintly. "It means this flight's about to learn what accountability looks like." And with that single sentence, the balance of power in Gate C-17 shifted forever. Rebecca's hand shook slightly as she tried to reassert control. "Chief Holt, with all due respect, you can't just walk in here and start issuing orders." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You called airport security to detain a child, a black child. You tore up her boarding pass and humiliated her in front of a crowd. I think you've done enough ordering for one morning." This wise, her mouth opened, but before she could answer, her radio crackled with a message from dispatch. "Rebecca Lane, report to supervisor control immediately. Possible suspension pending investigation." Every eye in the gate turned toward her. Rebecca's face drained of color. "Wait, what?" Daniel slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Calm. Controlled. Protocol 6. Works fast." Lila stepped forward, hesitant but brave. "Sir, may I say something?" Daniel nodded. Lila took a breath. "I saw everything." She grabbed Maya's arm, hard. When the officer asked to wait for her parent, she refused. She said kids like her always fake documents. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's bias." Rebecca spun toward her, voice breaking. "You little liar." But Daniel cut in, his voice a quiet blade. "Careful how you finish that sentence." The gate fell silent again. Even the officer averted his eyes. Maya stood close to her father now, fingers gripping the edge of his sleeve. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, she hurt me." The words sliced through him, sharper than any accusation. He looked down, saw the faint red mark around her wrist where Rebecca had grabbed her. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room did. He knelt to Maya's level, brushing a thumb over the mark. Does it still hurt? She shook her head. No, I'm okay. He smiled softly, pride flickering through the storm. That's my girl, calm under pressure, just like your old man. For a brief second, Daniel's eyes drifted, and a memory cut through him like lightning. He was 22, freshly graduated from the academy, standing in a grocery store line when a white clerk followed him to the door, demanding to see a receipt he'd already shown twice. He remembered the looks, the whispers, the sting of being called suspicious for simply existing. That day he swore that no one would ever look at his family like that again. Now, here he was, watching his daughter endure the same script, rewritten for a new generation. The flashback dissolved as Maya tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home?" He rose slowly, his voice steady but final. "Not yet, sweetheart. There's something we need to finish." Rebecca took a step back. "Please, Chief Holta. Didn't mean today." "You didn't mean to?" he repeated softly. That's what they always say before they delete the footage, before they rewrite the report, before they pretend none of it happened. He turned to the officer. "You saw her grab my daughter?" The officer nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I did." Daniel nodded once. "Good. Then you'll write that down, word for word." Rebecca's eyes welled, her authority collapsing. "Sir, please, Daniel raised a hand. "No need to explain. The cameras caught everything. Rate." He pointed to the small black dome above the gate. "And the truth doesn't need your permission to speak." The crowd murmured in quiet awe. The same hands that had once torn a boarding pass now trembled by her side. And as Daniel placed his arm gently around Maya, he said the line that silenced the entire gate. "You wanted to see her guardian, Miss Lane. Congratulations, you just met him." The sound in the terminal shifted again. No longer noise, but heartbeat. Every whisper, every camera, every uneasy breath waited for what would happen next. Daniel stood still, one hand resting on Maya's shoulder. His presence alone carried a weight that words couldn't measure. Calm, grounded, inevitable. Rebecca tried to recover what little ground she had left. "Chief Holt, maybe we can just resolve this quietly. I didn't mean any disrespect. You know how these things look online." "Then maybe," Daniel said softly. "You should have thought of that before calling the cops on a 10-year-old child." Her throat went dry. He turned toward the officer. "Sergeant, you're dismissed from this call. This is now a federal matter." The man saluted quickly, more out of relief than respect, and stepped aside. The air seemed to tighten as Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket and spoke with crisp precision. "Activate internal review. Gate C-17, Horizon Airlines. Record everything. Notify airline corporate liaison." A voice replied faintly through the earpiece. "Understood, Chief. Protocol 6 is active." Rebecca blinked, panic creeping in. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, eyes locking onto hers, "that everything you said, every action, every false report you made, is now logged and time-stamped, permanently." Lila Nguyen, the young attendant, swallowed hard but didn't look away. She had seen arrogance crumble before, but never this fast, never this clean. Passengers around the gate began murmuring again. One woman whispered, "He's the head of federal security?" Another answered, "And she tried to have his kid arrested?" Rebecca's hands trembled against the counter. "Sir, I swear, I was following procedure." Daniel's tone cut through her words like glass. "Procedure doesn't ask you to humiliate a child. That's not company policy, that's personal prejudice." This time erected. For the first time, Rebecca's polished voice cracked. "I didn't know who she was." "That's the tragedy," he said evenly. "You shouldn't have to." Behind her, the gate manager approached, confusion written across his face. "Chief Holt, sir, what's going on here?" Daniel turned slightly, never losing composure. "An employee under your supervision racially profiled and physically handled my daughter. You'll be briefed when corporate finishes reviewing the footage, which should be right about," he checked his watch. "Now." The manager's earpiece buzzed. His expression shifted instantly from irritation to fear. "Understood, sir." Rebecca's voice fell to a whisper. "You can't ruin my career over one mistake?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about careers. It's about consequences." Maya tugged at his sleeve gently. "Daddy, can we go now?" He looked down at her and smiled, warm, patient, utterly unshaken. Soon, sweetheart. I promise. Then he faced the crowd again, his voice carrying not anger but authority that felt like judgment wrapped in calm. Let this be a reminder, he said. Power isn't proven by who you can control. It's proven by how you treat those you think can't fight back. The passengers murmured in agreement. Phones caught every second. Rebecca stood motionless, her reflection staring back at her in the polished floor, a woman watching her own downfall in real time. And Daniel Holt, without raising his tone, had already rewritten the rules of the room. For a full 10 seconds, no one breathed. Even the flight announcements overhead seemed to pause mid-sentence, as if the airport itself was listening. Daniel's phone vibrated once in his hand. He answered without looking away from Rebecca. Evans, he said. A clear voice replied through the speaker. Yes, Chief. Protocol 6 has completed. Incident file is active. All audio from Gate C-17 uploaded to Corporate Ethics and the FAA liaison. Would you like me to confirm suspension notices? Do it, Daniel said quietly. Then he hung up. Rebecca took a step forward, her voice trembling. Chief Holt, please, I didn't know. He looked at her evenly. You didn't need to know. You just needed to care. Gasps rippled through the gate area. A man in line whispered, That's her boss's boss. A teenager muttered, No way, this is going viral. Phones tilted higher. Every angle caught the unfolding justice. Daniel adjusted his cuffs, calm as ever. Miss Lane, he began, you called my officers to detain a 10-year-old girl. You accused her of fraud. You grabbed her arm without consent. You did all that because you didn't think someone who looked like her belonged in first class. Rebecca's lips trembled. It wasn't like that. Then tell me, he said softly, how was it? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel continued, his voice deliberate. Every word a measured strike. You just profiled the daughter of the man who oversees every federal security officer in this airport. Every checkpoint, every report, every camera. The crowd murmured again. Some even clapped once, instinctively, before quieting. He stepped closer to the counter until only the thin pane of laminate separated authority from arrogance. You wanted to make a call, Miss Lane? Then here's mine. Thank you for watching. For one of the different to stay, and with fair. He pulled his badge from his pocket and set it gently on the counter, the metal catching every flash from every phone. You called the cops on the man who commands them. The sentence landed like a gavel. Rebecca froze completely. Her hand hovered over the counter, fingertips shaking. Behind her, the young attendant Leela covered her mouth in disbelief. Oh my God, she whispered, the words barely escaping. Daniel turned to the officer still standing by the doorway. You're dismissed. And for the record, Sergeant, thank you for not escalating. Yes, sir, the man said quickly, nodding before stepping out of frame. Rebecca's throat worked as she tried to find a script that no longer existed. Chief Holt, please, if you could just give me a chance to explain. Daniel held up a hand. Explain to whom? The passengers you humiliated? My daughter? Or the millions of people who'll see this video by lunch? Her composure crumbled. You're not going to ruin my life over this. Two-by have. With a definite take, they have. Daniel's expression didn't change. I'm not ruining your life. I'm documenting your choices. Maya tugged on his sleeve again. Daddy, can we go home now? He looked down at her, his voice softening immediately. Almost, sweetheart. I just need to say one last thing. Then he faced the crowd. Not angry, not triumphant, just steady. Let's be clear, he said. This isn't about power. It's about principle. Because if my daughter had been anyone else's child, this story would have ended with handcuffs instead of headlines. The terminal went still. Even the scrolling flight board seemed to hold its breath. Rebecca whispered, I didn't mean to hurt her. Daniel nodded once. Intent doesn't erase impact. Remember that. He turned to the passengers, voice carrying the calm finality of truth. We're all flying on the same plane, but some of you still think dignity requires a boarding pass. Not anymore. Phones captured every word, and as he placed a protective arm around Maya's shoulders, the crowd erupted in quiet applause. In that instant, the camera focused on Rebecca's face, the dawning horror of someone realizing the entire world had just watched her mistake turn into a moment of reckoning. Daniel's final words, low but resonant, echoed through gate C-17. You called the cops on a black child for sitting where she belonged. Now you'll learn what belonging truly means. He cuz leader, and with that, the gate lights dimmed, the noise rose again, and the internet had just found its next viral truth. For a moment it was silent. Not the calm kind of silence, but the heavy electric stillness before everything changes. Then a ping sounded from Rebecca's earpiece. Her screen flashed access denied. She blinked, pressed again. Nothing. Her credentials were gone. The system had already erased her. Daniel didn't gloat. He simply stood still, letting the weight of the moment settle. Protocol 6 is irreversible, he said quietly. Once activated, it reports directly to the FAA Ethics Board and your corporate chain of command. Every word you said is already documented. Rebecca's face turned pale. Please, Chief Holt. I'm not here as your punisher, he said. I'm here as your consequence. The crowd murmured. Some filmed, others simply watched in quiet awe. Maya pressed closer to her father, her small hand finding his. He squeezed it gently, a silent reminder that calm is stronger than anger. The gate manager, now visibly sweating, stepped forward. Chief Holt, corporate is on the line. They saw the footage. Daniel nodded. Patch it through. A voice came over the loudspeaker, crisp, controlled, female. This is Dana Michaels, corporate director of Horizon Airlines. Chief Holt, we've reviewed the incident and security feed. Please proceed with disciplinary action as authorized. Understood, Daniel said. Rebecca's breathing quickened. Wait, no, please, don't do this. I've worked here 12 years. Daniel's tone remained even. And in 12 minutes, you undid all of it. Lila Nguyen stood a few feet away, frozen between empathy and vindication. She'd been silent too many times before when smaller injustices happened, but not today. Chief Holt, she said quietly. She's done this before. I've seen it. Last month, a Latino father got pulled from boarding because she didn't like the way he talked. Daniel turned his head slightly toward her. Did you file a report? I tried, she whispered. It got buried. He gave her a slow nod. Not anymore. Rebecca's eyes darted between them, desperate. You can't just take her word. Daniel held up his phone again, showing the small red light blinking at the top. Everything you've said is being recorded live. I don't need anyone's word. I have yours. The officer who had remained near the door cleared his throat softly. Sir, what do you want us to do? Daniel took a breath. Escort Miss Lane to internal security. She'll wait there for corporate compliance. No cuffs. She's not dangerous, just in need of reflection. Rebecca stepped back, shaking her head. No, this can't. Mayam, the officer said gently. Please come with me. Phones captured the moment she removed her ID lanyard, her trembling hands unclipping the badge that had once symbolized authority. As she passed Maya, her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Maya simply looked up at her, calm, steady, and said, My dad says the truth always catches up. The words hit harder than any punishment. Rebecca lowered her gaze and walked away, escorted through the terminal as silence followed behind her. When the automatic doors closed, the air at gate C-17 shifted again. Relief. Justice. A quiet, collective exhale. Daniel turned to the crowd. Folks, thank you for your patience. You'll be boarding soon. This, NN. A man near the window called out, You handled that with class, sir. Daniel gave a small nod. Justice doesn't require volume. It requires proof. Lila stepped closer, her voice still trembling. Chief Holt, what happens now? He looked at her, eyes kind. Now, we rebuild the standard. Behind them, Maya tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, was she a bad person? Daniel knelt down beside her, his voice soft but firm. No, sweetheart. She was a blind person. But today, the light finally came on. Maya thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. Can we still fly? He chuckled softly. Yes, we can still fly. But this time, they'll know who's on board. The crowd around them applauded. Not loud, not performative, but steady. A woman wiped her eyes. A teenage boy whispered, That's what real power looks like. Daniel stood tall again and turned to the gate manager. Reinstate Maya Holt's ticket. Seat 2. A stays hers. Anyone objects, they'll deal with me directly. Yes, sir, the manager said quickly, typing as fast as his shaking hands allowed. The boarding screen flickered and updated. Passenger, Maya Holt, confirmed. Priority 2A. The audience of strangers broke into small smiles and quiet cheers. As Daniel guided Maya toward the jet bridge, someone in the back called out, "Sir, what do you call what just happened?" He looked over his shoulder. Accountability in real time. Maver daughter, and as he disappeared down the jet bridge beside his daughter, the remaining passengers knew they had just witnessed something far rarer than outrage, justice delivered with grace. Above the hum of the terminal, the intercom chimed again. Final call for Flight 421 to Atlanta. The flight would leave on time, but the lesson left behind would last far longer. The jet bridge was quiet, the kind of silence that settles after a storm has passed, not from emptiness but from awe. The hum of the aircraft vibrated through the metal floor, and every step Daniel Holt took beside his daughter sounded like punctuation to the story that had just unfolded at Gate C-17. Maya held his hand tight, her backpack bouncing lightly against her side. "Daddy," she asked, "are you mad at her?" Daniel shook his head, eyes forward. "No, baby, I'm not mad. I'm just tired." 1910. Tired of what? He stopped for a moment, crouched so he could meet her gaze. Of watching the same movie play over and over, different faces, same lesson. People think power is what you hold over others, but real power, he touched her chest gently, is how you carry yourself when they try to take it away. Maya's eyes softened, wise beyond her years. Like how you stayed calm? He smiled faintly. Exactly like that. They stepped into the plane. The first-class cabin went still as every passenger recognized them. The captain himself, a tall black man in his 50s, stood outside the cockpit, hat in hand. "Chief Holt," he said respectfully. "It's an honor, sir." Word traveled fast. "The crew's aware. We're sorry for what happened." Daniel nodded. "No apologies needed, Captain. Just accountability." The captain's eyes flicked to Maya. "You must be the young lady everyone's been talking about." Maya blushed slightly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "When?" He chuckled. "Sometimes trouble is just the truth with better timing." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the cabin, not mockery, but release. The passengers who'd witnessed everything now sat taller, the tension replaced by something lighter, cleaner. As Daniel and Maya took their seats, a woman across the aisle leaned over. "Sir, that was incredible," she said softly. "You didn't shout once." Daniel nodded. "Shouting doesn't make you heard. Dignity does." The woman smiled, tears glistening. "I wish my son could have seen that." From the back of the cabin, Lila Nguyen appeared hesitantly. Her hands still trembled as she clutched a tablet against her chest. "Chief Holt?" Daniel turned. "Miss Nguyen, corporate asked me to continue the flight. They promoted me temporarily, acting senior attendant." He gave her a slow, approving nod. "You earned it." She blinked, stunned. "Thank you, sir, for listening." Daniel smiled faintly. "You didn't just speak up, you stood up. That's the difference." The engines began to hum louder, a low thunder beneath their feet. Maya gazed out the window, watching the runway stretch into the horizon. "Daddy," she said quietly, "why do people think we don't belong?" "Well, that's not her." Daniel looked out beside her. The question hit harder than anything Rebecca Lane could have said. He took a deep breath. "Because, sweetheart, they mistake our quiet for weakness. They don't realize it's discipline. They think we have to prove ourselves, when the truth is, we already did. We're just waiting for the world to catch up." Maya nodded slowly. "So we keep waiting?" "No," Daniel said. "We keep walking." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be departing shortly. Please fasten your seatbelts." 2. Passengers obeyed, but their eyes still drifted to 2A, where a story had already taken flight long before the wheels would leave the ground. As the aircraft rolled toward the runway, the soft rumble beneath their feet blended with murmurs from the other passengers. Gratitude, disbelief, admiration. One man leaned across the aisle to Daniel. "I recorded everything," he whispered. "If you want, I'll send it to you before posting." Daniel shook his head. "Post it." The man blinked. "You sure?" "Yes. Let them see what calm justice looks like." The internet's full of anger. Maybe it's time they see restraint win for once. Or the engines roared. The plane lifted, smooth and effortless, breaking through the clouds like truth rising above noise. Maya's small fingers slipped into her father's. "Daddy," she said softly, "it feels lighter up here." He smiled, looking out at the endless blue. "That's what happens when you stop carrying what isn't yours." Down below, the airport grew smaller. The gate, the crowds, the echoes of prejudice shrinking into distance. But the lesson stayed large, etched in every witness's memory. Hours later, as the plane touched down in Atlanta, Daniel's phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls, news outlets, official inquiries. Even the Secretary of Transportation's office had left a message. "We saw the footage. Thank you for your composure." He silenced the notifications and helped Maya gather her things. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. "Can I tell Mom what happened?" He smiled. "You better, she'll hear about it anyway." Dakov. And the raid? They exited into the terminal, greeted by murmurs and a few quiet claps from travelers who'd recognized them from the videos now trending across social media. Number Gate C-17 was everywhere. Reporters waited outside security, microphones poised, flashes firing like lightning. But Daniel didn't break stride. He paused only once, long enough to say a few words into one of the cameras. "Today wasn't about a title," he said calmly. "It was about a little girl who was told she didn't belong, and the people who decided to believe her instead of fear her. That's progress." A reporter called out, "Chief Holt, any message for Horizon Airlines?" He turned slightly. "Fix your culture, not your PR." With that, he guided Maya through the crowd, hand steady on her shoulder. That night, across the country, the footage from Gate C-17 flooded every feed. Some watched it for justice, others watched it for the twist, but most watched it for the quiet power of a man who never raised his voice, and a child who never lost her dignity. Clips looped endlessly, Rebecca tearing up the ticket. The moment Daniel's badge hit the counter, Maya's final line. "My dad says the truth always catches up." In living rooms, offices, airports, strangers nodded in agreement. Comments filled every post. This isn't just about race, it's about respect. By midnight, Horizon Airlines issued a formal statement. "We have zero tolerance for discrimination in any form." Effective immediately, all staff will undergo mandatory bias and conduct retraining. The employee involved has been terminated. But the most shared post of the night wasn't corporate. It was a video from Lila Nguyen, a short clip of Daniel and Maya walking toward the jet bridge. Her caption simple: "He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he just stood tall." That's what justice looks like. Millions liked it, millions shared it. And somewhere between all the noise, one truth echoed louder than anything else. That sometimes the most powerful sound in the world isn't a gavel, or a siren, or a scream. It's silence that refuses to back down. As dawn broke the next day, Daniel stood by his kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over Atlanta. Maya padded into the room, still half asleep, and climbed onto a stool beside him. She yawned. "Daddy, are you famous now?" He smiled softly. "No, baby, we're just seen." She grinned sleepily. "That's better, right?" He looked out at the light spilling across the city and nodded. "It's the only thing I ever wanted, for us to be seen and still stand tall." White won in the 7. And as the world replayed the moment that changed Gate C-17 forever, one line remained in every heart that heard it. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard.